this is a better week already than it was the beginning of last week. Let me tell you.
Yeah, what happened? What happened at the beginning of last week?
Let me tell you this story.
Okay. Sure.
So, we went to my wife's friend's house for a little party, a little get together.
4th of July.
Sorta. The subject is a little sensitive, but I mean, we can talk about it off air. I don't want to spread that onto
a gathering of individuals happened. Gotcha.
Yes, gathering of individuals happened. So we were hanging out. Just I had what was going on? Oh, I worked all day, like 9. Well, I worked in the morning, like 9 to 5. I came home and recorded Power Block with Ed. And my wife went first without me, and then I went later. We sat down to watch fireworks, right?
Yeah.
So they're setting off fireworks, and one fell over and shot towards Sana and I. And hit the ground, popped up, and burst right beside my head, and the casing hit her in the back of the head, and she had a cut on the back of her head, probably about, I don't know, 1.5 inches, 2 inches long, and I cannot hear out of my right ear because of how loud it was right here in my head. It was awesome, and by awesome I mean it was terrifying. So
is everybody okay?
Yeah, everybody's okay now.
Okay, now,
no.
What kind of wound care did you do for Sana?
Just kind of cleaned it up. There was no like gaping gash or anything. It was just like when the firework exploded, I think the casing hit her and grazed the back of her head and kind of just created a little, like, I wouldn't even call it a cut. It was just like the skin broke.
Okay.
But it looked way worse than it was. But the casing also hit me in the arm, and like I had a welt on my arm for probably 1.5 days-ish. And yeah, my hearing is gone in my right ear, so that was fun.
I mean, okay. So, and I know, like right before we started today, like you're not hearing out of your right ear, and that's probably something that could or could not come back. I'm not familiar with that part of the anatomy enough to really speak.
But Matt, you're the doctor.
No, I'm not. No. I'm Dr. Shaniqua Blood Souls, but that's a totally different discipline. Like that's a completely different problem. So what'd you clean Sana's stuff off with? And do you have any wounds? Because firework casing is not exactly room temperature. It had to be a bit hot.
Yeah, well, I was wearing a jacket, so anything that hit me, at least.
You had armor.
Yeah, Under Armour jacket. To be honest. Yeah. But yeah, no like lasting physical damage really. Sana's hair smelled like burnt hair, but
with that natural
that happens probably. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that happened, and but everything's okay now. Just need my hearing back, and I'll get it checked out if it doesn't come back in a couple days. But yeah, that was the start of my week last week, and then on Tuesday, whoever parked next to me in our parking lot at our apartment hit the back of my car. So there's a dent in the back of my car.
That sucks. I'm sorry, dude.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that, like this week's starting off good though. Had a good day at work today. Recorded a POW block today with Ed.
Cool. You have a good weekend?
Let's see.
I mean, it is Monday.
I worked all weekend, so it wasn't like wasn't great. But I mean, I work in a restaurant, so weekends are kind of
it's mandatory.
Usually Tuesdays and Thursdays are my days off. So if I have 2 days off, so but yeah, that was my weekend, and today is another day, and tomorrow I'm gonna see. I finally have it planned out because like we're gonna get into like NGR in a second, but like my goal is to film all the shows that I'm on in one day, and then just I'll have the rest of the week off to edit, like piecemeal everything out because you know we record NGR a week early, or at least try to, and you know. Pow Block's already edited because I use OBS now for it, and it's already edited. I just got to throw intro, outro on it, and throw it up on YouTube. And you know, it's good. It's good. I'm finally in a place where like nothing's really overwhelming.
Cool. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. So it's good. I knew I was going to be busy the last couple of weeks just because of everything that that's happening. You know. The talent that we're pushing and stuff like that, and that's kind of why we're having a fireside chat today, because it's important for us to be still. I still want NGR to be what we started over a year ago, like just
kind of, and I'm the same way,
non-structured, kind of just hanging out with friends for an hour and a half, and just having a good time for an hour and a half, and hope people enjoy us goofing off for an hour and a half. So, and we have added a couple other shows. Moose is heading up Nerds Gone Platinum, which is going really well. Actually, the first episode that went up did very well.
He and Jason took to that like a duck to water. Oh my god.
Yeah, and then like. The second episode, they had a guest fall through, so I ended up hanging around after NGR last week to do that episode, and that episode's even better. And it's let me tell you, Nerds Gone Platinum is almost up to the same amount of downloads as Nintendo Pow Block, and Pow Block's been going for 6 months. So and I don't like. There have been people that have asked me like what I want to do, like if I have any sort of long-term goals with, they asked me this with platinum achievements as well as this. And me personally, like, and this is just me, this has like Corey and I have never really had this talk, and this doesn't really, I don't want my stance to sort of color future conversations that may come up in this area, but people said, what is your goal? And I said, I really don't have any because the cool thing about it is it's something that I care about. It's something that I like doing, but it's not work. I already have jobs that I use to pay my bills. And I like the fact that this is, these may not be friends that I have, next door or in the same town or even the same state. But I like the fact that I know these folks well enough. And like you, Moose, Ed, even Todd and John and the guys that I do brew review with, and even Chris all the way in Lebanon, like there's been a certain camaraderie that I cannot really put my finger on that is special, that is special, that it's like having a friend. Like when I went to Chicago and hung out with my best friend Jason, like it's great to see him, and he is the closest thing I will ever have to an actual brother, apart from my stepbrother named Jason, ironically. But like he is that one person that is just like, no matter what I say, he sort of knows what I'm thinking. And like you, Moose, Matt Phillips, and everybody I've mentioned before is kind of like on that level. And I think that's why we all click. That's why we all, interact. And it seems to go, it doesn't turn into, well, it turns into all of us sort of busting on each other, but it's like friendly banter rather than, right.
Hey, we do this because we want this to be our job. And that's just that's the way I look at this, rather than like, hey, I have to be up to the last 30 seconds on whatever video game news has happened. I'd like to be that, but at the same time, I feel like me trying to do that would detract from all of this. And it would take something away. And yeah, like that's what I love about doing this, and that's why, barring very few incidences, I've been present for all of it. And it's one of those things that it's never a chore. And the minute it becomes a chore is when I sort of have to have a conversation with myself. And luckily for me, I'm thankful that this doesn't seem like this will ever be a chore. So cheers to that.
Hold on. I got something. Sort of.
Oh, all right, cool. Can to can. Doesn't matter what's in it.
Woo. Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. Is like, I do want to expand somehow in some way to the point where, like, yeah, we're growing in viewership and listenership, and like, you know, we have a lot of friends that are trying to do the same. Well, not the same thing, but a similar idea, right? And like, you know, for me, the fun aspect of this is not like I was talking to Ed earlier today, and I said, you know, I don't ever want this to feel like work. In the first, and like the two shows that I have a priority for is NGR Radio and Nintendo Pow Block. Anything else, as soon as it becomes a chore, we're dropping it. I don't care what it is. Like the Xbox show that we've been testing around and trying to see if it would work or not. I eventually want somebody to host that. And if nobody wants to host it, we're dropping it. Like, I don't care how popular it is. Like, I don't want this to feel overwhelming because, you know, the whole DNA situation, right? We've had had this conversation multiple times off air, right? But the fireside chats, first of all, are meant to be more intimate and more like, I want to open up to you, and I want to open up to people that listen to our show and kind of let them in from my perspective a little bit, right? I mean, we put on these personas. You wear your glasses, I have my hat, and we're, you know, I'm the boring one that hosts the show, and you're the loud one who drinks beer, and then there's Moose, who's kind of like playing off both of us now. It's like, you know, that's our that's our quote podcast character, and that's fine and dandy and everything. But there's also like these where I kind of want people to see like what we're doing behind the scenes. And, you know, a year and a half, 2.5 years ago, when I was doing the DNA stuff and, you know, producing everything, editing everything, writing everything, you know, hosting everything, you know, and then I was like, well, we have a huge community. And that's when like you and I started this show, because this show, for those who are newer listeners, was the original community-based show for the DNA network.
Well, and it was also the thing that you didn't have to really prepare for. You just came and like I mean, one of our earlier conversations about it, we're just like, look, I just kind of want to enter the show and just go. If we if we need a structure, just bring a topic just in case.
Right.
And beyond that, it was just let's see what happens. And I feel like I've done my job in giving you nothing to write because like if there's space, I find a way to fill it with my tangents. And you know, for better or worse. And I try not to step on. I try not to offend viewers. Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure I have some opinions and points of view that if I say it to the right people the right way, they'll be like, man, you're an asshole. But I also try and be a little bit empathetic and see things from the other side and say, okay, well, if I say this particular thing sucks. How can people see it? Now, if we have, like, for example, the like on Platinum, I got a lot of shit for hating on Final Fantasy and Metal Gear Solid.
How dare you?
I know, right? But I don't like those things, and I tend to say I don't like those things just to get a rise out of people who hold them so near and dear to their heart. But I'm not gonna call those people idiots for caring about that,
right?
Because I don't think they are.
Right.
I really don't. And because look, I mean, look at the stuff I'm into. I'm into some weird stuff that nobody wants to go down the hole with. I mean, Dark Souls alone. I mean,
how many times have you made fun of me for playing 1,100 hours of Destiny?
Yeah. I mean, meanwhile, if you add up all my time with Dark Souls, it's way worse.
Yeah.
It's way worse. I mean, Dark Souls itself is 6 years old this year, and I'm not above playing it again. I don't know. I think I have 7. I have 7 characters, and at least 5 of them have enough time and enough accomplishments to have platinumed the game 5 times. You don't earn those trophies twice, but I've done it 5 times. So it's. But I do. I mean. One of the things that we talked about when we first started this was, like, I respected what you did with DNA, but, like, I was also the first one to say, dude, you might be, like, I work a couple of jobs and do this, and I think you are pushing yourself way too hard. It's a weird pot kettle situation if you look at it, but at the same time, it's just like,
Yeah, I was like,
you were stressed.
I was, man. I was like, okay, we would spend 2 full day shoots, right? Like, of doing these shows. I would edit them and try to have them up. Like, I mean, everything we did was like a week in advance, but, like, I still try to have them up, segmented out. You know, at that point, I have a mixer that's sitting in my closet that I haven't used in almost a year because I don't need a mixer because I'm sitting at my computer, right with you. You know, I have so many things because I thought that DNA was going to become something, and, you know, for a minute it was, right? I mean, it was doing well in terms of everything we were trying to do, and, you know, we were trying to do things outside of video games too, right? We had a movies podcast, we had a TV thing, we had,
you guys had a lot.
Yeah, we had so many things going on, and, like, all that content's still there on the DNA YouTube page if you want to check it out and see what we were doing back then. But, like, you know, I was sleeping maybe 3 hours a night, 4 hours a night max. I was working 40, 45, 50 hours a week. I wasn't seeing my wife. Well, then girlfriend, now wife. Like,
then fiance and girlfriend.
Yeah. And it was just, like, doing too much. And then, like, what, like a year, I don't remember when, like February, no, probably like September, October, I was like, I talked to you and I was like, you know what, I'm pulling the plug. I literally cannot do this anymore.
Yeah.
And you said I was making the right decision, and, like, I felt like I was letting a lot of people down, and a lot of people let me know I was letting them down by pulling the plug on DNA. Like, I can show you some of the tweets.
Oh, I'll bet. No, you don't need to. You don't need to.
And I felt bad. Like, I really felt bad. And, like, I wanted to focus on what I loved, which was this show, right? This show was the only show the whole week I was looking forward to, because this was the show I could enjoy myself with friends talking about stuff I wanted to talk about, without having to keep to a schedule, without having to prep show notes, without having to scour the internet for news. Like,
well, and also it's like you also did the due diligence of trying to bring the other people in DNA on board. And while I feel like they were okay with doing it, but I think also they didn't, I mean, to get listeners and viewers under the hood as far as possible, Like literally the prep for this show is generally like we talk about, we reach out the week before saying, hey, what night is everybody free? And then we all have a conversation, and then that can or cannot change. And then we all, like, if someone can't make it, they bow out. They're like, look, something happened, can't do it. You don't let this stop the train. But also you have to bring a topic and talk about it. And there are, I mean, as someone who, like, I didn't learn how to do this until I was put in front of a microphone myself. Not like on Platinum Achievements, but I learned it in high school when I was on the radio. Like, they put you in front of a mic, and that light goes on, and there's nothing happening, so you have to talk. You know, you learn pretty quickly how to fill time. You know, the first couple of times, you fill the time with ums and uhs, and you know, now the only thing I really have left of those early days of me being on the radio is my pregnant pauses, because I do stop and pause and think for a second before I finish sentences a lot. It's a problem. But for a lot of individuals, just coming up with a topic to talk about can be pressure. And I guess the one thing I lack in that department is fear of talking about anything. Like, because I'm not afraid to have a discussion about something. I'm also not afraid of different opinions or my own. I'm not afraid of my opinion offending somebody, because I can at least explain myself. And that is not rigid. That is something that, like, I'm more than, like, let's say, for example, Corey, you would, like, I just walk in going, hate Destiny. And then you're like, okay, look, I love Destiny. Let's have this conversation. And then eventually we meet somewhere. I mean, hell, wasn't even interested in Destiny until I heard you talk about it on DNA. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should try this game. And then I did it, tried it with the Taken King. And then I ended up playing enough to do a raid with you and Joey, which I promptly passed out in. Because
that was funny.
Because I was tired. Because I was tired, and then I wake up a couple hours later going, "Hey, what did I miss?" And then you and Joey are like, "Matt."
Yeah, I forgot you were in the party. That's how long you were sleeping. Oh man.
Yeah, it was a good time. And then shortly after that, I was just kind of done with Destiny. But
that was.
But like, I wouldn't trade that experience for the world. And for some people, that is either a big no or a, like, why would you do that to yourself? And people are people.
Yeah. Going back to your point of, like, being afraid to, and like, not being afraid to embarrass yourself or say things that you want to say or not. Like, that was my biggest thing in high school, was like, I didn't want to embarrass myself. That was like my biggest thing, was like, I don't want to get embarrassed. I don't want people to, like, think I'm dumb. And like, it took me forever to get over that. And like, to an extent, I'm still not over that. But like, that's why this show is so important, because like, let's go back to my first podcasting experience, right? Like, I didn't do speech in high school. I didn't do like drama or anything of that nature. I didn't get up and like recite anything. My first experience outside of like sports, talking to somebody, like, was when I started writing a blog. Before DNA started, I started my own blog thing that I was like, I'm going to write just as like a release. Like, I need a creative outlet. You know, I don't really have a lot of time to do artwork anymore. And so like, I'm going to write because it's something easy I can do while I'm sitting next to my wife watching TV, whatever. And, you know, around the same time, James and Josh from Life of Gaming had started Life of Gaming. Yeah. And so somehow, somewhere, they found my dumb blog, because I was writing about, I don't know, freaking Wind Waker at the time, I think, HD or something. I don't know, some dumb Nintendo game. And they were like, hey, do you want to come on our podcast? I'm like, Sure. I've never podcasted before in my life, but sure.
Yeah, that was super early. That was like episode 5 of theirs, right?
It was like 3. It was like their third episode. And I was like, yeah, this was probably the worst experience of my life, not because they were bad or anything, but it's because I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea. And like at that point I was like, this is something I want to get better at. I need if I'm going to write a blog, people are already starting to reach out to me after a month of doing this. Like if I'm going to be on a show, like I need to get better at this. So I started recording myself and not posting any of it. It's still somewhere. It's on a hard drive somewhere, me recording myself, trying to talk to myself. And I still have trouble talking to myself, like for vlogs and stuff.
Doing the vlog is like the one reason I sort of backed away from that is because you need someone to bounce things back. And doing it to yourself and just seeing yourself on screen, it's weird, but continue.
Yeah. So like I started that, and then, one of the guys that I used to work with and who I actually started DNA with, Dan, you remember Dan?
Yeah.
And like we started DNA or we started the D-Pad Gamescast.
Yep.
And we thought it was like the coolest name ever because his name was Dan and it started with a D, and my last name was Dierig and it started with a D, and we thought it was cool, and we had this weird podcast of PC gaming and Nintendo gaming. That was the podcast. There's nothing about Xbox or PlayStation. It was all PC gaming and all Nintendo.
Yep.
That was it. And so like we started building and building and building, and we were like, oh, this is fun. We should just keep doing it. We should go longer than a half hour, because we were talking to the Warp Whistle guys at the time and trying to figure out like, hey, you guys have a half-hour show, which is kind of short for a podcast, but they're like, yeah, but it's the perfect get in, get out, especially if you have 1 or 2 topics to talk about. Like you get in, you get out. And so we started working off that model, and our shows were like 30 to 45 minutes. And then, the whole DNA thing, we had a couple people lined up to join us in DNA, and that fell apart, but we ended up keeping the name. And that's how it grew from there. And then, and anybody who's been following us knows the rest of the story. I'm not going to go into it. Like, we ended up rebooting DNA like twice because of certain situations that happened. And like, at that point, I was just like, Matt, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And you're like, just don't do it. And then that's how, and I think from that point on, like after like a week of like wondering if I made the right decision or not, like this show in particular became better because A, I wasn't worn out. B, like you weren't asking me if I was all right and asking me if like, all the questions that, you would ask somebody when you feel like something's wrong.
Yeah.
And I had more energy. I had more initiative to make the show better. And then you obviously make the show better because you're the best co-host I could have ever like reached out to start this with. And it's just like, I'm not trying to say that to butter you up or anything, because what do I get out of it? But
we're past that.
But that's when I really like felt like, we had something with the show. And then we ended up bringing Pal Block over with us from DNA because I wanted to do a Nintendo show. And, we've gotten that show down pat too, like 45 minutes in and out. Ed and I are done. Yeah. Like it's especially now because it's so slow. Like I think our show today was like 38 minutes or something. So like those are the two things that I really wanted to focus on. And we were like, I didn't know if we wanted to do PlayStation content or Xbox content, especially Xbox content, because none of us really like are into the Xbox ecosystem. And anything I play on Xbox, you can play on PlayStation also. And it's like,
if it were still like the 360 generation, it would be a different thing.
Yeah.
And like, and had things not happen in my personal, like if I hadn't gotten divorced, I might have an Xbox One and play Xbox One just as equally as it did between, well, just I'd play more equally than I do because I don't have an Xbox platform.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all that is. I mean, I know that like it's the reason it's perfect for Moose and Jason to host NGPs because they don't want anything to do with Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
They have their thoughts on the platform and just let them have it. That's their thing. Me, on the other hand, like I don't own an Xbox, and the Xbox has put up the least amount of argument for me to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
But there are still those titles that I'm not going to get to play anywhere else. Unless I build a PC, which frankly, it's easier to throw. What is it, 300 now for an Xbox?
It's 250 for 500 gig.
Yeah, and the games I want to play would all fit on that 500 gigs, and I think in terms of like a one-off purchase, that would be worth it for me. Mm-hmm. Especially now with the news of Cuphead basically being an Xbox exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
So
that really surprised me that was Xbox exclusive. Like I thought maybe time exclusive, like Inside was last year. But
I see a Super Meat Boy situation happening there because Microsoft locked that up on the 360. It could not come to PlayStation 3. Mm-hmm. But once the 4 was announced, all of a sudden that's a new platform, and that probably opens up a new discussion. So that's why Super Meat Boy came to PS4 as well as Vita and not PS3. But again, it's people smarter than I can have that conversation. But it's not that like I'm not against Xbox. It's just there are 3 arguments left for Xbox and me. One is Cuphead. That's first and foremost. Second is Sunset Overdrive. And then third is a game that I was super high on at the beginning, and I've gotten less and less high on the more I've seen of it. But I still think there's something there. Sea of Thieves. Mm-hmm. And then I probably would get the Rare Replay because I loved a lot of those games. So
yeah,
there's that.
I don't know. I don't really try to aim for a specific platform because I own all 3 platforms right now, right? So if I bought Mass Effect for Xbox because it was on sale, it's not. That's just a financial thing. I don't really care what platform I play on as long as the game's fun. But I don't know. My one idea, if NGP didn't take off, right? The way that Matt and Jason are just killing it over there. My initial thought, and this was a thought I wanted to do with DNA before I pulled the plug, was almost have a second NGR radio show that would be like the Giant Bombcast. Mm-hmm. And, we would just, it would be just a second show and that would be it. We would have 2 shows and that would be it.
Yeah.
But, NGP's taken off like crazy and PAL Block's popular. And this show is, that's just out of the question right now. But like I said earlier, I do not want to be put in that DNA situation again. And we had a talk. We've had multiple talks off air.
Yeah.
About that you don't want me to get overwhelmed again. And I was like, I told you, I want to step back. I want to be more of a facilitator. You and I discussed having NGR to be a distribution point for good content from our friends who are, because building something from the ground up is so hard. And we have friends out there that are so talented, like Antonio getting his Switch thing off the ground is that's the one thing. Is trying to get something new off the ground is so hard. And that's where I think NGR can step into and facilitate our people who need help getting their stuff out there. Like the brew review, I think is a perfect example. You've been doing that show with John and having it just part of the NGR platform is good because, it provides a different set of content on our website. And it helps John getting his show out there. And, even, Jesse White has written some stuff for us already. And
he's written good stuff too.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's any way we can help get other people's stuff out there. I just, I don't want to create a show that I'm going to have to host again.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the big thing is like, I want to do this show and I want to do Power Block, and that's kind of it.
Yeah. And that's really it. I mean, like, I have things that I want to do that I haven't done.
Yeah.
The music
and
stuff. But
I want to write. You know how liberating it was last week to sit down and write last week?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I haven't written anything in 6 months. And to sit down and actually like write something that wasn't show notes was so refreshing and so just like stress relieving. That was just like, man, I'm so happy I get to sit down and do this again.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, like in the time since I published my last review, which I believe was the XX, like I've started and stopped like probably album reviews on 30 different things, and there are multitudes of things that go into that, and I'm not going to bore you or any of our listeners with that, but it's like, if I don't feel it, if I get started and like I feel it at the beginning, but then all of a sudden I lose steam, I'm not going to finish that because if I try and pick up where I left off, it's completely disjointed and it doesn't work for what I feel like I want to say. And that's why a lot of what I've written, and I have notebooks full of it because I write everything in by hand first before I type. It just hasn't been what I wanted. So that's like the only reason, but like, I'm still going back to all those. I'm still like going back to all those. I'm like, I have to finish my thoughts on this because I really think there's something here. And I guess it's probably more difficult there because my vocabulary is different than it is for the beer things that I've written. Because the beer things that I've written, like, I don't have the vocabulary for beer that I do for music, but I can articulate how drinking said beers makes me feel about them and whether or not I think they're good. And then like the whole Chicago thing, like there's two other pieces coming out of my experience in Chicago, which was just such a cool, and it was liberating just to think about that rather than the music stuff, because like I was on the plane listening to albums going, okay, I'm going to listen to these again and really articulate my thoughts because I have travel time. Didn't happen, of course. But like, doing that in itself is like thinking about something different than what I want to think about has been, as you said, just liberating. And I like the fact that more than anything, this is sort of a catharsis for both of us in its way, and long may it continue.
Yeah. Like I told, who was I talking to? I was talking to somebody the other day and I was like, look, if NGR as a platform fails, like quote unquote fails, whatever, I don't know what you call it. I mean,
yeah,
as long as you and I are still having fun with this show, I will keep doing it. I will do it until we are unable to speak into a microphone. Like, I love this show so much. And like, I would not do this without you. Like, I don't know if this show could exist without you or me. Like, I mean, we've had episodes where like we weren't on, but like,
right. That's just life. I mean, you got married for fuck's sake.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't care if NGR succeeds as a platform. It's something like I want to do because I enjoy, like, this is like outside of the podcast and whatever, like I want to get into graphic design and web design. That's what I'm gone to school for. That's what I enjoy doing. You know, designing thumbnails to make them pop excites me. Like, you know, I just redesigned all of our thumbnails to make them look more sleek and less in your face, but still looks like, you know, hey, that looks interesting to watch. You know, I enjoy doing that stuff. What I don't enjoy is, okay, you know, you got to do your Destiny show right now, and tomorrow you got to do your Xbox and Nintendo show. Tomorrow you got to do your PlayStation show and your main show. What's your main show going to be? Oh, I don't know. We covered all this stuff on all these other shows, so we got to talk about something else. Like, that's the stuff I don't want to do. Oh, I have to watch a movie this week because we have a movies podcast. No thanks. Geez. Like, you know, and not that like I'm disparaging anything we used to do, because it was all great, and like we worked really hard at it, and like
all of you in your ways busted your ass for that.
But like, you know, this is something totally different, and I'm approaching the platform in a different way. And like what I told everybody in the chat, in our Facebook chat, I was like, look, it seems a little overwhelming. You know, we took back over the DNA Facebook group recently, and we rebranded it the NGR Facebook community. Like, yeah. And then we used our old NGR community as a creators corner where people can bounce ideas off each other, find guests, promote their stuff, that kind of thing. Because, you know, we're trying to facilitate everybody's content if they want to promote it. Like, that's kind of where I want to be at. And like, I know it sounds like I'm repeating myself, but like I want to be there for friends without, and I told everybody in the Facebook chat, I was like, I want you guys to do as much as you want without feeling overwhelmed. The minute you feel overwhelmed, you need to stop. And like, that's something you've told me, and I wanted to relay that to everybody. And I was like, I know it's a little overwhelming right now because we're getting so many things off the ground, but like, we have pieces to fill in if somebody feels overwhelmed. Yeah. We have friends from other communities, other podcasts, other video stuff that we can plug in if we need a guest. Like, nobody should feel overwhelmed. And that everybody was on board. And that feeling of everybody being on board was like the most, all the stress. I thought, like, I was like, I don't want to be doing this again for nothing. And the stress that just was lifted off my shoulders. And I was like, the minute something feels overwhelming, we're dropping it.
Yep.
I don't care how successful it is. I don't care if our Xbox show is our most successful show in 6 months. Yeah. If it's overwhelming, we're pulling it because this show takes priority. Yeah. So,
well, I mean, if you wanted to, like, it's if the entire week is a meal, this is dessert. And if dessert overpowers the meal, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, if we're successful enough to the point where, like, you know, hypothetically, I'm not saying we're trying to go out and do this, but like, hypothetically, if we got a sponsor or two, or we got somewhere where we were, you know, becoming financially successful with this, you know, I would look at things a little bit differently. But for now, like, NGR Radio is something you and I did because we needed a release from the stresses of life. And this is the way that you and I could do that together. And with our friends from around the internet, from around the world, you know, just to hang out for an hour and a half to 2 hours, talk about anything we wanted to, play a game, and get out. Like, and that's why I think our show is so successful. Like, I was looking at our analytics the other day. We're at the highest we've ever been for the month. Like, July is our highest downloaded month so far already. And we're only, 11 days in as of this recording?
We just got started, yeah.
You know, it's our most downloaded month ever already after 10 days at 11,000 downloads. And I'm like, why do 11,000 people listen to us talk every week? Like, and like, that's exciting and everything. But like, as soon as we feel overwhelmed, like, I don't want that. I don't want the show to ever change depending on success or failure or life or anything. Like, this show, the show is this show, and it's always going to be this show. It's always going to have the same format, and we're always going to hate each other during 20 questions.
Yeah, I mean that was the goal. Like I don't remember whose idea it was. I'm pretty sure it was Adam McGill's. And I don't think he expected us to hate each other after it was over. But I like the fact that we just sort of developed like, you know what, you win, fuck you for a week. And yeah, and the one thing I would add on top of all of that is like, cool stuff doesn't begin and end with NGR, and I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't mention things that weren't on the website, because we're I mean there are things that do just fine, like and that are just good things to listen to without, you know, shilling our own stuff, as it were. And like, and really none of it is ours. Like if you listen to 1-1 now or the Brew Review or NGP specifically, like that show is Moose and Jason's. This show is Corey's and mine. Pow Blocks is Corey's and Ed's. 1-1 is Larry and Ed's. The Brew Review, like I'm a part of it, but I feel like I have little to no ownership over it, because John, Jesse, and Corm are just great personalities, and I'm just happy to be in that conversation, to be 100% honest with you. But like there are friends of ours that, you know, do great stuff without having an NGR label on it. Phoenix Overdrive, they do a great time. Life of Gaming, we brought them up. They do a good job. Mm-hmm. Secret Friends.
Did you watch Antonio's Switch talk?
Yeah,
man, that was awesome. Like 20 minutes, that first episode, 20 minutes, like
20 minutes in and out. I mean, you know, whether or not you agree with their opinions, I'll be honest, I've not played ARMS, and even if I get a Switch, I don't know if I will play ARMS. But you know, I think they presented that topic really well, and Antonio is still good at keeping shit on track. Like he was the only one that could keep me on a rail. Mm-hmm. You know, he did that week in, week out on Platinum Achievements. But and like, you know, and I know Corey has buddies that do stuff. I know people that do stuff. Like, I mean, I know Joe Ryan who does Comics and Coffee, as well as Select Start. I think if they're still on, I always forget. Because I know the other guys on that had like life things. The Neeklings, Kiku, off doing their own stuff now. Good for them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Geeks Gamers really taken off like big. Yeah. You know, like we had Ed and I talked to Josh Finney the other day on our Xbox show. We had him on, and we were talking about stuff, and like, yeah, they're just taking off. It's exciting.
Yeah. And you know, and I just like, if you want to find good stuff, we will point you the way, but it doesn't always have to be on our site either. We're not like, we don't limit things to NGR is life, everything else is not, because we'd be assholes if we did that.
Yeah. NGRradio.com is the only website you should be looking at. Jerks.
You poor people, if that's your only website. There are so many other things to learn.
Way to read my 3-month late Zelda review.
Nothing else has happened.